One time for the one time. It's the family bloodline.
Yes. Welcome back, good people. And thank you for hopping on with us for another very special episode of the Platinum Guest Series. I am here with an amazing musician, artist, singer, songwriter, uh, voice actor as well. Right? I saw that a little bit. We'll talk about
Yep.
that. I'll ask you about that in a second. And actually go into all the things that you are into and what you do. And I generally I take pleasure in listening to you introduce yourself. So with that being said, by all means, the man of the hour, please introduce yourself.
Man, appreciate having me on here. My name is Hartmanni. I am at the core singer-songwriter, guitarist, but I do production as well. I do a lot of my own production. Um, as you mentioned, I love voice acting. I haven't been able to get into that as much as I want to, but I definitely love the art of it, and I do a little bit of it. I do my fair share for the moment, but uh, yeah, the singing, the songwriting. I play lead guitar as well. There's one of my babies right here, my main one.
Yeah,
Um, but just on this musical journey, man.
for sure. So quick question. We ran into each other. You were actually
Yeah.
the first person that Manny and ECAS, shout out to ECAS, shout out to Manny Lugo. Of course, shout out to Zoe. But first person that we spoke with at, and you're gonna have to correct me on this, and this is again, shout out to Keith for messing me up on this. Nam or Nam? How do you pronounce it? That's the question.
Nam.
Nam. Okay, that actually
Yeah.
makes sense.
Not Vietnam. Yeah.
All right. All right. Good. So you were the first
But I
person
actually
that
saw someone post about that.
really.
Yeah, leading up to it, I saw he's a it's kind of a parody musician, but he is like his name is Juan Mayor. He does a little
Yeah.
play off of John Mayer, as if like John Mayer copied him. He's like, this next weekend I'm going to Nam. I'm going back to Nam. And he just made this whole funny bit about it. And I was like, I'd never thought about that. And I've lived around Nam now for the past what, 6, 7 years. So
Oh, wow.
you're not alone in thinking that or getting messed up with it.
Well, good. I feel good about myself now. And I'm not as bad.
Yeah.
So next time I talk to Keith, I'm gonna make sure I say that to him. I'm not an island. Don't treat me like that.
You're good. You're good.
So,
No.
so with that being said, how long have you been going to the event? Like, because you just said 6 or 7 years, but how long in its entirety have you been going there?
The first time I went was 2018. I moved to LA in 2017, and I got a really cool opportunity to be a guest with some buddies of mine that were playing with their band at the time for the Taylor booth. It was back when Taylor Guitars actually had a huge showroom, and it was massive. They're one of the companies that have downscaled since the pandemic, but I got to go then, and haven't really been able to go back again since 2018. But again, we met this past year, and that was the first time going. Got some connections, but I mean, living in Los Angeles, you're just around it. If you're not actually in NAMM, you're at least around NAMM events. People are in town, playing shows, hanging out. Buddies from across the United States fly in, and we reconnect and chill. So that's why I said I've been around NAMM since 2018.
Wow, that's amazing.
But that's
2018,
kind of like
I was in Mountain
that's
View,
kind of like
California.
L.
I had no clue as to that this thing,
Okay.
the Bay Area. It's up in the Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. But yeah, and it's another story for another time, man. It was a different life. I was a different place, and I had no clue that this was a thing until several years later.
Yeah.
But we ran into you.
Oh yeah.
Going back to the story, we ran into you in the lobby. You were the first person we spoke with, and I saw that you had on your name tag for the event and all that other good stuff. Uh, we chopped it up for a hot second, and it was a pleasant talk because it
Yeah.
actually happened what I anticipated. Didn't you walk us to the badging area?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
on my way out. So I was like, you guys were asking about where the badges were, and I had just gotten mine. And I was like, I was trying to explain it, and I was like, it's on my way out to park, so let me just take y'all there.
yeah. So thank you for that again. Otherwise, I would have been looking crazy.
Yeah.
So during our
Nah,
chat, I remember you sharing with us, and it was just like to me a very interesting story where you grew up, how you grew up, so on and so forth. So, if you would please kind of like rehash that, like talk about your background, where you came from, where you've lived, the things that you've come in contact with, how long you've been in music, the influences that your music also kind of shows and projects and speaks to go in about that.
Okay. So I grew up. My parents were missionaries for my, you know, most of my life until my early adulthood. So they up and moved our family when I was 5 to Albania, and that was. I mean, I'm kind of glad that we did that when I was really young because I wasn't quite used to, what America was, and so there was a chance to really grow up with a different mindset. I hadn't been, you know, indoctrinated in all that is America and all that is American culture and language. So we moved over there when I was 5, and it was it was crazy. My earliest memories were there was no like McDonald's. Just imagine you're a kid and you're like, there's no more Happy Meals. There was no like Dr. Pepper and root beer and these different kind of American things, junk food, fast food, candies that you're used to as a kid, especially.
Mhm.
But and it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. Albania was newly independent from communism. It had only been a few years since the dictator had died. We moved over in '93,
Oh wow.
so it's I am very very thankful for growing up like I did because it gave me a very overarching worldview of just what the world is like outside of the U.S. and especially going into a poverty-stricken third world country where for most of my time there we didn't have electricity or hot water 100% of the time. Especially those first few years, I remember going a week or two without electricity, and that was just normal. Like that just
Wow.
happened. Electricity gets shuts off. You got to ration out your hot water. Um, but again, because I was so young growing up like that, that's just how life was, and you got used to it. So, like when there's ever power outages here in the States, I'm like, all right, well, get the candles, and
Yeah.
uh, you can just hang out and talk to people. It's fine, no big deal.
Yeah.
But so we moved over there when I was 5 years old, '93. Again, just very. It had been communistic and, in fact, atheistic. It was declared the dictator Enver Hoxha declared it the first atheistic nation. So not only was like all privatized ownership and business stripped away, but a foundational belief in whatever religion that was, whether it was Islam, whether it was Christianity, Catholicism, Orthodox, Protestantism, all that was outlawed and banned.
Hmm.
So it's like when everything is gone, usually if you're a person of faith, you can at least go to and rely on that. Now, granted, there were people that still went to that, but as far as an outward appearance, no churches, no mosques, no nothing like that. So it was a very hammered down and desperate people when we moved over there. And so it was a really cool opportunity to just bring hope. Like we were involved in a lot of humanitarian stuff, food, uh, and just help in whatever way we could. And that's how I grew up. Like as a kid, you're not as involved as you could be, or as like my parents were on a daily basis. Because I was just growing up. I was just trying to learn the language and find friends and hang out with people and just grow up. But that was still integrated into my upbringing as well. And that's where, like, my parents are musical. My parents, my mom and my dad both sing. My mom plays the flute. My dad plays guitar, and so we were always around music, even before that here in the States. So I always was around a musical atmosphere, whether that was at church or whether that was at home. But I was always involved somehow in some sort of musical expression. And eventually I was always singing, but eventually started taking piano lessons, and then I remember around like the transition between middle school and junior high. I remember finally just like deciding one day, I was like, I'm going to play guitar. I'm just going to pick it up. And that was always an inclination that my dad had. He was always not one to force kind of an instrument or anything like that on us kids. I'm oldest of 4 kids. I've got a younger brother, a younger sister, and then a youngest brother. But he tells me now, he's like, I just had the guitar and the instruments there, praying one day you would just pick it up. But it was never like, all right, David, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna take guitar lessons, and then that's that. No, It was always something that needed to come from me first, which I really appreciate. Picked it up, started learning it when I was around 12, 13. And man, I fell in love with it instantly. Like there was, I don't really remember like what I was into at the time. Probably PlayStation and hanging out with friends, soccer. I grew up playing soccer, football.
Yeah.
But man, when that part of the music hit me, I was like, it didn't take me long before I realized this is what I want to do. And started learning, took classical guitar, had a great teacher that I'm still in contact with. And shortly thereafter, within probably a year and a half, 2 years, started playing in bands. And I distinctly remember in high school realizing, and more solidifying that this is what I'm going to do. I had made a decision early on. So like, played more bands in high school. And one of the cool things that really showed me like the impact of music was we would go and just get a generator and go set up in a random neighborhood grew up in Tirana, the capital city, Tirana. Or if you're from Albania, it'd be Tirana. That's just their accent, back to my voice acting linguistical background.
There you go.
And we would set up not a stage, but like in a neighborhood, like in a circle of apartments. Sound system, can't do that here in the States. Regulations out the butt. But in third world country, they don't have those kind of restrictions. And thank goodness they don't, because I really got to see just people come together via music, regardless of whether they spoke English or not. Everyone knew Shrek was big at the time. Everyone knew the song. Then I saw her face, now I'm a believer. And so we would play that, and they would all be popping out their apartment balconies and jamming along. We'd play some other random songs, but it was really cool to see the unifying factor that is musical expression, that everyone would come around, no matter, we didn't know who they were, their backgrounds, ethnicity, religion, language. Music crosses all those barriers when it's good. And so I was able to see the impact of music and what it could have on a people. And so that just stayed with me through college. I was very driven. My wife, I'm married, I have a daughter, and it's often asked of me, especially when we were first dating. She was like, "So, girlfriends?" Like I was like, I didn't date in college at all," and that was really weird. Um, and I get asked sometimes like, "Why?" And I was like, "I was just focused. I'm out here paying for this degree,
Yeah.
and but my main goal is I'm trying to pursue this passion of music that I've been onto since I was in high school." And I'm thankful that I at least had that focus and drive to keep pushing through college and not get distracted by a bunch of other stuff. But and that's just been from there. Songwriting in high school, that's where it started for me, and it continued through at university and post university, and eventually led me out to LA to really dive in. It was almost like a last ditch effort. It was like, all right, if this is it, I'm going to go out to LA, and if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But if it is, this is my best shot. So that all happened in 2017. Just back up a little bit. Moved back to the States for university in 2005. And
Okay.
so 12 years, I was in the Dallas area, south of Dallas. Um, and in 17, LA has been really good to me, but still pushing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That you say that, I was beautiful family, by the way. Absolutely beautiful family.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Shout out to One on One Studios. I gotta make sure I mention
Oh
them.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
beautiful studio.
Matthias.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful studio, man. That's awesome. I was looking at some of your doing my homework, and was like, "Oh, I know that studio. I know the floor base. I know where that. Oh man, that's a
Yep.
beautiful. Yeah, love that place. Love that
Mm-hmm.
place. Shout out to the
Super
guys
cool.
there. Yeah, hopefully I can get them on later and talk about the studio because it's a very fantastic story, but that's behind it. So you were
Yeah.
talking about
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Legendary spot. And Matthias and his partners, and they've really done a great job of kind of revamping that place and bringing some new life into it. Fun fact, I actually visited that studio randomly before the pandemic. Before I moved away from LA when it started, because it was like this entertainment of events and entertainment. There was nothing going on. Like everything was shut down. So I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and
yeah,
get in debt. I'm gonna move. I'm
yeah.
gonna go somewhere else. But it was super cool coming back into it once had met Matthias and he had taken it over. But super dope spot.
Yeah.
I actually ran into him a couple days later at NAM. He was like, dude, he was like, we got some new amps and you need to come by and try. So I actually need to make a point and get back up there. I think he's got some Friedman amps and
Oh
some
man.
cool guitar stuff.
Whenever so I don't even know the next time I'll visit the LA area. I do come to California a few times a year, but that's it's for different endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I when I not if but whenever I go back to the LA area, my goodness, I got to get back over to that studio. It's just absolutely beautiful in there. It's beautiful. So
Yeah.
you were talking about um, your younger years and talking about
Mm-hmm.
high school as well as university. So where did you stay in
Yeah.
Albania through high school and then move back to the States, or was there a transition that your family made midway through high school or after you graduated high school to come back to the States? Where'd you attend college? How did that work? How did that look for you?
So I had the school that I was in Albania. It had been set up by some other missionary families and other international people, um, and it was essentially only like pre-K or kindergarten through eighth grade. So I had actually intended at one point to go to a boarding school in Germany, Black Forest Academy, for high school, and I'd actually toured the grounds there. Beautiful area. My background is, or one of my backgrounds is German, so I was like, oh, it'd be, you know, good time to get in touch with the fatherland, the fatherland or whatever.
Nice.
Learn more about that culture. but that didn't have it wasn't in the cards. Actually, pretty sad. One of the dormitories burnt down, so they actually couldn't accept any more students for
Oh,
a
wow.
certain time. But no, in hindsight, it was a blessing because that period of high school for me in Albania was very impactful as far as some of the relationships I was able to develop. And I mean, I don't know what could have happened in Germany, but I do know as a musician, as a songwriter, I blossomed during that time in Albania. And it was some of the best times of my life. So I'm thankful it didn't happen. But so then after high school, or during high school, like I said, the school I was at didn't have anything past eighth grade. So I ended up homeschooling for part of it. And then eventually, some of the other kids that were in my situation kind of formed a homeschool co op. So we
Mm.
did our own homeschooling programs together in the same room, but just had like a teacher overseer that could help out. So it was cool. It was very, very laid back. I loved it. I could get done with school by like 1 p.m. and go work out or something. It
Oh
was chill.
man, I'm jealous.
Uh,
I'm jealous of that.
yeah, well, that's kind of like America is very unique in that we put kids in school like it's a job. Like we have them there from 8 o'clock to 3, 4 p.m. Most schools, Albania, they were in school for like 4 hours. Like, and
Jeez.
that's it. They did. I mean, they crammed everything in, but you can do that. And Albanians come to the States all the time for university, and they excel because they all know how to study, and they all
Hmm.
know how to cram in work. Um, very intelligent people, but yeah, I've got my qualms with the American education system.
That
But
makes two of
that's
us.
another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
another episode. But so after that, I came back to the States University, and as a missionary kid, there are some schools that are set up um, uh, Christian entities that actually give scholarships for tuition for missionary kids. So one of those I went to at the time was called Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas.
Ah,
It's a
yes.
mouthful to try to
Yes.
say, but they've recently changed the name to Nelson University, which whatever, their prerogative. Um, but I went and studied music there. And that was a big pull because my mom had graduated from there, and I had a lot
Mm.
of family around the Dallas area. So it was, you know, moving out by yourself at 17 to a different continent,
Oh,
let alone out of your parents' house, was something that I was excited for. But underneath it was daunting. I was nervous a little bit, but the excitement outweighed it. But it was definitely like, okay, well, bank accounts, driving, credit cards,
yeah.
American sarcasm, like all this stuff I'm having to learn for the for the first time.
Yeah.
So, came back to university and ended up starting a vocal performance major, and quickly realized that I don't I don't want to study what's on the syllabus all 4 years. I want to sing and be creative. So I ended up transitioning after the first year to a just a general studies degree, which I'm very
Okay.
thankful for because that allowed me to um, study other subjects that would still count for my degree and that I would just be wasting money on. So that worked out because I love history as well. So I saw a bunch of archaeology and history classes that I wanted to take that otherwise wouldn't have counted for my degree, and I would have had to end up taking more summer classes or even extra semesters. But um, studied music, studied guitar, and ended up studying history for a doctorate degree after that because of my decision to go with a general studies degree during my undergrad. But that's another thing. I love history, archaeology, especially ancient civ. Is
Yeah.
I'm fascinated day in and day
What's
out. I think that has to do a lot with growing up 20 minutes from castles, maybe.
sure? Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So
What
Albania, I'll just throw this caveat in there. Albania is very unique in that it is at the crux of most of the world empires that ever happened. So you think of like, you think of the Persians,
Mhm.
because the Syrians, Babylonians, they didn't get to Europe, but the Persians definitely tried to through Greece. But that's it. It's all in that area. So the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and then later during the Great Schism of Eastern and Western Holy Roman Empire, that
Yeah.
was a crossing point. That Albania itself historically was the launching point for the Roman Empire into Greece and the rest of Asia Minor and then Asia. They would sail from Italy across the Adriatic Sea to a city called Duris, and then from there launch into the rest of it. So Albania has amazing history and archaeology all around, and so you can't help but, at least I couldn't help but be fascinated with history.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to. So I love history as well. Uh,
Yeah. Again, that's another podcast we could go
yeah,
into.
absolutely. Just a quick question, like time period. What's your
Yeah.
favorite time period of history that you look at, that you like to study, delve into?
Oh man,
And then we'll save it for another podcast.
that's that stuff. I'll definitely say my favorite. I can definitely okay, but that's hard too because as I studied before, I would always say pre-industrial revolution. Anything pre-industrial, pre-1800s
Yeah.
was fast. But then, like when I started actually studying the industrial revolution, how all of those decisions shaped the world that we have today, I'm like, well, okay, well that's fascinating too. But I'm definitely, if I had to choose, I'm definitely an ancient Civ guy. Like
Okay.
I love pre Roman Empire, all of that stuff, BC.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
fascination.
Man, we definitely gotta we'll definitely have to come back on another podcast and talk about that because I do a lot of reading. And
Oh yeah,
again, I love history as well. Love history. So yeah, we'll
yeah.
definitely come back to that. So
Let's do it.
different, yeah, different influences,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to your music and especially growing up the way you grew up. Um, what were some of the biggest influences? Because you've got a pretty vast array of song selections, right? You go from John Mayer to Stevie to Mike,
Hmm.
MJ. Like you have a huge array, and even when it comes to writing your own songs, the Spanish song that you have, I can't pronounce it. That's why I didn't
Yeah.
say it. Uh,
Todo para ti
yeah, if it was French, I'd be able to
means
say
okay. Well, let me Google Translate that real quick. I figure that
it. But yeah,
technology. Yeah.
right. But you have a wide array, very vast array of different musical intertwined uh, collabs that you go through. Even listening to your vocal
Mm.
tones and the way that you sing, sometimes you hit at a gospel, sometimes you're hitting on more of a folksy type of sound. Sometimes you're hitting on, I don't want to call it a popular mainstream, but it's a showmanship, but it's also still articulating your vocal prowess, as it were. So where did that come from? Like those influences?